What you are about to hear is taken from decades of original research and has profound implications on mankind's belief about God, the meaning of life, and the ultimate destiny of the human race. Even though my website, the Bible UFO Connection, on which this presentation is based, has the word Bible in it, and I am a biblical theologian, I am not religious in the orthodox sense of the word. I am not associated with any religion, and I am not part of a church. I am religious from the actual biblical definition of religion. The only time religion is defined in the Bible, it states the following: pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. That's from James 1:27. In simple terms, it means we should take care of the needy and keep our integrity in the world as intact as possible. I respect all religions and believe this research proves that the concepts presented in this work, which are from the Bible, are reflected in most, if not all, of the world's major religions. I reserve the right to question church doctrine based on a clear statement in the very Bible the church claims as its authority. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21 reads, "Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good." Although my work has been compared to others, I do not subscribe to, nor do I include the theories or concepts of others in my work. I do my own research, and I publish only the results of that research. In simpler terms, I am not a Bible-thumping, hellfire and brimstone religious wacko with a holy axe to grind, trying to save you from some threat to your soul. It is not my goal to change your mind, just to present concepts in an academic way that will make you think outside the mainstream orthodox religious box. How I got into this field was actually a very logical progression with a completely unexpected result. Although I was raised and trained to be a Baptist minister, I left the church before ordination. Over the following 3 decades, I studied theology independently and pursued my education in areas that I thought were relevant to my theological concepts. I initially studied comparative theology, the study of the world's religions, which sparked my interest in the paranormal. My vocation over the last 20 years has been in construction, which led me to an in-depth study of the largest, most precisely built structure on Earth, the Great Pyramid. And that resulted in my first published work, a website titled The Giza Oracle, the Great Pyramid, which is now part of my main website, the Bible UFO Connection. In the course of doing that research, I discovered a biblical verse that might be referring to the Great Pyramid. In the book of the prophet Isaiah, we find these words, "In that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord." That comes from Isaiah 19:19. In the middle of the Nile Delta sits the Great Pyramid, a structure so advanced that the primitive copper tools and almost non-existent skills of the ancient Egyptians could not have accomplished such an architectural wonder. It's also considered an impossible task in the modern world, even with our highly advanced technology. Most engineers studying the Great Pyramid agreed that flight had to be involved for an obvious reason. Some of the stones used were up to 70 tons, the weight of a modern locomotive, and the shallow depth of the Nile made floating the stones across the river impossible. All quarries from which the stones were cut lie across the Nile River from the Giza Plateau, and there are no barges large enough to float such a tremendous weight then or now. My studies into the Great Pyramid had previously led me to believe that only an advanced technology, perhaps an alien race, could have accomplished this feat. If the God of the Old Testament placed a monument in Egypt, the Great Pyramid certainly would fill that bill. So on a whim, my theological side led me to study flight in the Bible, to see if I could perhaps find an account of how that monument had been built. The place, of course, where flight happens is the sky, and that's where I started. Strangely, the word sky or skies only appear 11 times in a Bible containing over 770,000 words, and where most events happen outside. All the things one would expect to see in the sky, such as birds, clouds, storms, stars, and such, were all described as being in heaven or the heavens. Upon checking the meaning of the word heaven for the first time as a theologian, I found that the word heaven is used over 700 times in the Bible in both the Old and New Testaments, and is translated almost exclusively from two different words. The Hebrew word shamayim, which is defined as the sky, the place where the clouds and stars are, in the Old Testament, and in the New Testament from shamayin, the Aramaic word of the same definition, the sky. And it turns out the word heaven in the Old English, the language the Bible was written in, is the word for sky. In other words, almost every place the word heaven is used in the Bible, it should properly be rendered the sky, not some other realm or dimension called heaven where God dwells, or where we will be rewarded with an eternity in a divine retirement home. What I did find described as flying in heaven, which I now knew was the sky, were divine beings, flying, landing, taking off from the ground, and hovering in thick, swift, and spinning clouds, bright, dark, and low clouds, glorious and sparkling clouds, great clouds, little clouds, and fiery clouds. God and the angels are described as broadcasting voices, sounds, and lights from these clouds, descending out of or rising into these clouds, and men are guided by, rise up into those clouds to have meetings with these divine beings, or to travel from one place to the other. And that's only the clouds. There are also platforms, whirling chariots of fire, sky thrones, great whirlwinds, fiery wheels, pavilions, glorious storms, sky dwellings, rolls, and sanctuaries. Whether or not one believes these objects are actually flying vehicles the God of the Bible lives in, appears with, and travels in, is a matter of opinion. The fact that he and other divine beings are clearly described as directly associated with these flying objects is undeniable. The careful categorizing of over 1,500 biblical verses led to the discovery that the gods and divine beings of the Bible travel in rapidly flying, glowing, flashing, spinning, metallic objects which appear dark and solid like low storm clouds in the daylight, while brightly lit or glowing with projected beams of light at night. These objects descend to the ground, ascend into the sky, and hover over the ground for long periods. Sounds are broadcast from them, and they exhibit the power to alter the natural laws. Human beings and other beings are described as ascending up into and descending down from these objects, and perception of time is altered. In most of the world's ancient writings, those beings called gods are commonly described as flying in objects with similar descriptions to those in the Bible. The reason this is so important is that it questions the very nature of the gods of the world and challenges the beliefs of 2 billion Christians. If I am right, the entire world is now under the cloud, no pun intended, of the greatest deception in the human experience. We grouped those 1,500 plus verses under 5 basic headings. The vehicles, what are they flying? Flight characteristics, how do these vehicles fly? The beings, who is controlling these vehicles? And the technology, do these high-tech vehicles display a level of advanced technology, or is it just miracles and metaphor? And close encounters of the biblical kind with these vehicles. What you are about to hear is taken from decades of original research and has profound implications on mankind's belief about God, the meaning of life, and the ultimate destiny of the human race. I am not associated with any religion, and I am not part of a church. I am religious from the actual biblical definition of religion. The only time religion is defined in the Bible, it states the following: pure religion and undefiled before God and the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and widows in their affliction, and to keep himself unspotted from the world. That's from James 1:27. In simple terms, even though my website, the Bible UFO Connection, on which this presentation is based, has the word Bible in it, and I am a biblical theologian, I am not religious in the orthodox sense of the word. It means we should take care of the needy and keep our integrity in the world as intact as possible. I respect all religions and believe this research proves that the concepts presented in this work, which are from